And Are You Okay is a not safe for work podcast, so any young listeners are discouraged from continuing. However, we literally have no way to track that. So do whatever the hell you want and enjoy the show.
Get caught.
It won't. I have mental notes this time. Every time I'm on a podcast, I just word vomit for so long. I was like, I gotta make mental notes here. I gotta be ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, typically how this works, Skyler, is that we usually just like ramble into like, I guess we decide to just fucking cut it. I'm sure you've listened to an episode here or there.
I've listened to a bunch of them. So yeah.
So we do that, and then we like jump into an intro, essentially. Gonna talk about
a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, oh my god. You know, it's almost like we're like, we might cut this in right now, I guess, maybe.
I just go ahead, do it. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we don't press any of the buttons here. It's all in post. But they don't know that. But they don't know that.
Listen. I've been sitting here for like 2 minutes, and Mikey has not commented on my mustache yet, and that makes me feel bad.
That was actually false.
That was actually the first thing he said. He said, with the fresh mustache.
You know what?
I'm like going for like Vegeta in like GT, you know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair.
I got the spiky hair, the mustache, you know what I mean?
Well, speaking of Dragon Ball, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to channel. I know he's sitting like here with us right now, but I'm going to channel Matt, and I'm going to channel our friend Travis from the Dragon Ball for Life podcast. You were listening to Annie, Are You Okay, a Star Wars podcast.
A Star Wars podcast.
So I'm channeling that energy here, and I'm going to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, the guy behind the intro and the lo-fi beats on the Dragon Ball for Life podcast. You may know him as the front man of like 3 different bands from Lancaster. You might know him as the guy who created the vast universe of Omega Star 7, but I know him as the man who launched and ruined my music career. Skyler, thank you for coming on to Annie, Are You Okay? A Star Wars podcast.
I showed Mikey like the real side of music, and he was like, I can't do it.
The business side of the music.
It was like a behind the music.
They're going to do a whole 30 for 30 on the band aesthetics, and it's just going to be me struggling to make everything work, and then us bombing in front of Texas in July. So
they loved it, dude. I promise you.
It was a big moment. I didn't listen to music for like a year after that.
Damn. He was in that deep of a depression.
That's where my WIP addiction started. So it's all your fault, Skyler. But that's okay. I still love you. That's my guy. Skyler and I, when we started our band, we that was our first endeavor together, and we found out that we had this mutual love of Star Wars and several other pop culture things. But I would say that it was Star Wars that really brought us together. Skyler, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like there's a little bit of Avatar: The Last Airbender in there too. But
I like Avatar. Yeah.
I
sure do.
It grew into
talking about the M. Night Shyamalan movie, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Of course.
It's my literal favorite movie.
I named my firstborn Ang.
But we're happy to have you on. I'm going to get into the topic of the episode in a second, but before we do, we have to acknowledge it because we've been acknowledging it at the front of every episode, and we got good news today. The Screen Actors Guild is no longer striking, so we no longer have to thrive in the chaos. Content is going to be flowing. Congratulations to the writers and actors for negotiating to not be taken over by AI and all that other good jazz.
Now get out there and entertain us.
Yeah, damn it.
Yeah.
And this is also a good time, I guess, to throw the spoiler warning in for any spoilers that might come up. I don't know. I mean, Skyler's going to probably get in his Andor bag, so let's be real. Something is probably going to get spoiled for you if you haven't watched the show.
All the things.
I won't. I promise.
If you haven't watched it by now, what are you really doing?
I know, right? And you're listening to this? Crazy.
A Star Wars podcast.
Well, we brought Skyler, architect of Omega Star 7, here to talk to us about world building. While vast and complicated, it's the reason Star Wars and many other universes, big and small, in the pop culture landscape feel real, rich, and lived in. We will discuss our favorite aspects of this within Star Wars. And, I guess I'm just going to hand it off to Skyler to start us off here and kind of give us what really Star Wars did for him in terms of world building, what stuck with him, and what kind of got your creative juices flowing because of this. Because I think part of the world building aspect of things, is obviously there's this rich universe that George Lucas created, but I think as kids we allowed it to kickstart our imaginations, right? So, what stuck with you from the world building, and what are kind of your favorite aspects of it within that universe?
So, as a writer, I could tell you the big thing is oh, Boba Fett looks sweet or something like that. You know what I mean? And that's that's as a kid, yeah, it's the visual aesthetic aspects of Star Wars that make it very, very memorable. You can look at something that you've never even seen before, and that belongs in Star Wars. It's a weird zeitgeisty thing. But as a writer, I talk about this thing. I'm talking about it in a couple different podcasts and other media I've done. But there's something I call the George Lucas method, which is I'm going to just present something to you with a bunch of plot holes, and we're gonna leave those open for filler later. So I've used within the very first hour of Star Wars: A New Hope. They talk about the Clone Wars. As if he ever had any kind of idea about what it really was.
30 years later.
It was a really cool name. It was a really cool name. It was very, evocative. And what is the Clone Wars? And then it was like he had enough world building. And when it comes to fantasy, what really makes the fantasy is what you don't see. Because that's what makes a world feel lived in. It's that when you enter it, it's just the world. There is no as a sidebar, I dislike a lot of media fantasy that's we are on Earth and now here we are in a non-Earth setting, because it kind of is it's a shortcut to the best parts of fantasy. Is any of the Narnia books is a great example. Is where it's the real world and then you enter the fantasy world and then it becomes okay, so they're still, from Britain. They're not some magical fairy tale land. And I think, Star Wars is the exact opposite of that, where it's no, this is just a guy on a farm who farms water, which again that's such an interesting little aspect of the universe. They never explore what moisture farming is, but you kind of get what it is. It's they're on a desert planet. There's no water. And but they never explain it, and because it doesn't have to be explained, it's self-explanatory.
Nah, you just fucked my head up. Because so much of what you said is unlock core memories. Because anytime anyone sees a car, a new model of a car, the first thing everyone says is oh, that looks like that would be in Star Wars. That's real shit. If you see a real futuristic car, you're oh, that looks like Star Wars, or something like that. So that's crazy. I never really noticed that. And also something, I love what you just said about I guess essentially under explaining certain things and allowing people's imagination to fill in the blanks. Because if you give us a character in a movie and tell us everything about them, all we have, like you said, is the movie at that point. And I'm just along for the ride. But if you leave stuff out, like you said, moisture farming, not knowing what it is, Luke starting the movie wanting to be a pilot for the Empire, that kind of got glossed over. My man fed into the bullshit at some point in time, so we don't talk about that. So things like that. So I actually I love that concept of purposely under explaining things.
Well, it definitely spiraled into a lot of other media. Some other things that come to my mind that I'm sure there's no actual the creator sat down and said Star Wars is what we're gonna emulate here. But I think the reason Star Wars is so important is because it changed how a lot of storytelling is. I mean, we all know, we've all read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, and all, it was pages and pages of exposition. Two things come to mind are video games. Legend of Zelda, And I would call it's a spiritual successor in some lights, the Souls series, the Dark Souls series. The reason I say that is because both their storytellings are, this is what it is. You are entering a fantasy world. And with Dark Souls, it's created an entire community that since 2011, so 13 years old now, people are still diving into these 10-year-old games looking for some kind of connection to these, like, just based off little bits of lore scribblings on each item. It's because it only shows you this beautiful aesthetic, art direction, story that's pretty relatively easy to understand. I mean, Star Wars is a great example of a movie that's so simple in essence that it literally leaves your mind for
imagination.
Like, it leads you to being like, I want more. It shows just enough behind the curtain to get you into it, which is why I think it's so successful.
This is a question for both of you, and I think you brought up a really good point, but do you think that if the aesthetic of Star Wars wasn't as nitty, like gritty and dirty to begin with, that we wouldn't quite have that feeling of it being lived in, and the societal aspect of like obviously a lot of people who they saw A New Hope, that was like the first like big thing for them. You go to Mos Eisley and like that town in and of itself, before you even enter the cantina, is hustling and bustling. This is even pre special edition, when they have even more shit going on. But you have to kind of like credit the like actual art style of, like, I guess Ralph McQuarrie in this instance, or maybe even some of the prop creators, for putting enough interesting stuff in front of you to want to explore that universe more. Because in and of itself, and I think I've gone on record saying this before, but A New Hope's actually my least favorite Star Wars movie, because it happens to deal with the least amount of stuff that I care about in the universe. But none of it would exist without it, because it creates this like rich landscape that allowed all of these ideas to flourish. And it's visually stunning, not just on Tatooine, but even the small glimpses of Yavin that we get. And then, of course, everything on the Death Star is very, like, has that dystopian feel to it, very Fahrenheit, like 451, if you will, like vibe. Do you think that without it, we would, like, do you think if it was just, because I'm not to throw Dune under the bus, but I feel like Dune just stays on that, like, level?
Well, I think the thing with Dune, and I could talk about Dune for hours too, but because it's not a big inspiration for Omega Star 7 in its own way, but Dune is more like Lord of the Rings. It's pages and pages of exploration, and it's not lived in. So the thing about Star Wars that makes it believable, or I shouldn't say believable, but livable, that it feels so lived in, is because it's not a progression of our society. So in that time period, in the 70s, all science fiction was, even, Alien came right after. Alien was the more accurate version of like what we're looking at in the future. You know what I mean? Like Starfield is a modern thing that kind of reminds me of like what NASA punk is and the retro aesthetic. But Star Wars at the time was like the only media, except for maybe Valerian, that was a lived-in retro aesthetic. It was old before old was a thing. You know what I mean? Like it captured that 70s, 60s Western vibe. It was the first to do it in that amount of success, so if it was like Star Trek, I mean, again, it would take away from the fantasy, because Star Trek, as zany as it looks, is still believable. They're like, well, yeah, this is what we thought the future would look like, versus Star Wars, which in the beginning says this is in the past in terms of where you know what I mean? Like it's. And so I would agree that like if it wasn't like this weird westerny kind of dystopian, I just think it wouldn't be the same. It would be, if they opted for a more shiny new space look, it just wouldn't. I don't think it'd be the same. I don't think it'd still be around together.
It'd be Blade Runner.
Yeah, it really would. Yeah,
it would fade into everything else of that time period. It stuck out because Lucas was like daring enough to be like, no, we're gonna make something that hasn't been done before. You know what I mean? That was the big thing.
Because it came off the coattails of 2001, right? A Space Odyssey.
Odyssey,
which was obviously a very impactful movie in its own right. But I think the biggest thing between that is the shots in 2001 are slow, whereas like George wanted everything fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it plays into it a little bit, but
I mean, 2001 is definitely like, I mean, even George Lucas has said it. He's like, it's the greatest science fiction movie of all time. That because Star Wars, to me, and I think a lot of people, science fiction it's a fantasy story. It's,
right.
You know, like if you put it up against things like, you know, Next Generation or any of the Star Trek movies, which are nowhere near as entertaining, but they deal with a lot of themes of things that are believable. It's the same with Blade Runner, Alien. These are things that are believable, like ancient species and, you know, things like that. It all makes sense in our brains, whereas Star Wars, it's just so fantastical from top to bottom. It's you know, lightsabers and space wizards, and there's just no way it could ever be a real thing.
Yeah, it's like actual escapism. Because it's
exactly.
like you can take yourself out of your real life. Yeah, like you're saying, like Blade Runner, Alien, Star Trek. It's like it just looks like some shit that might happen in real time, just in the future. So it's like I'm still like in my life. It just might be ahead of time. But Star Wars, first thing they say, like, no, that's not your life. This isn't where you guys are from. Totally different place, totally long time ago. So it's like, you get to like you said, be in it, like live in it, because it's like, this isn't about us. I can actually just enjoy this and not worry about life. Smart.
It's why I'm blown
look at George
away.
Lucas.
Well, George Lucas is a visionary. I mean, a movie maker, not so much, but a visionary, 100%. I mean, and listen, we all love Star Wars, but we're not going to sit here and talk like there's not some of the worst storytelling in Star Wars. But
you're not getting no Pulitzer prizes.
This is gonna. So I thought about this. I feel like I want to get it out while it makes kind of sense, in case we ever circle back to it. The thing about fantasy writing in all mediums, dark fantasy, high fantasy, space fantasy, all of it, is a suspension of disbelief, right? So no matter what you do when you're writing fantasy, what separates it from fan fiction is a suspension of disbelief. So when you write something, it has to be believable immediately. Like people have to buy into the concept immediately. And they have to, you know, be like, that would definitely happen in this universe. So Jedis or anything in the prequels. I mean, the midichlorian thing, that was a great example of like, that fucking no way. Like we just bought into
space sperm.
We just bought into the idea of the Force. Now you're telling us it's weird micro
space sperm.
And they had to really
just say it, Skyler. Just say it.
They had to sell the space sperm. They had everyone drinking the space sperm, dude. I'm telling you, it was
like, the space sperm.
Well, they just told us it was Kool-Aid.
But okay, so for example, this is like this is going to be real contentious with Mikey. I've been biting the tongue on this one. The reason I dislike The Last Jedi.
Can we kick him off this episode? No, I'm just kidding. Is it too late to kick him off? No, I'm just kidding.
I will preface it by saying this. There's a lot of things to love about The Last Jedi. There really is.
And then there's a lot of things to hate about The Last Jedi, which I will readily admit.
There really is.
I'm going to talk about the one thing that I don't think a lot of people would get on my side for, but it's my hill I'm going to die on. It feels like fan fiction.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you why. A lot of the stuff immediately is like, there's no way that would happen in Star Wars. Like, for example, Luke. Listen, I think his character arc written in that story is decent for fan fiction. But like, for the suspension of disbelief to work, they have to realize that Luke was way too much of a goody-goody two-shoes, and we didn't show enough of Luke going down that pathway of giving up. They showed one sequence of him about to kill Kylo. That's not enough for me to buy into the concept.
Anakin in the prequels.
That's not enough for me to buy into that concept. And Anakin's a great example. I loved the arc of Anakin. They did not explore it hard enough until the Clone Wars. And even the Clone Wars were kind of...
I fucking like this guy. I said the same exact thing like 2 episodes ago.
Even the Clone Wars was like, they really didn't show Anakin like twisting the other way until
hard disagree.
Okay. But I'm just saying,
Mike, I support the Clone Wars giving the backstory.
I love the Clone Wars.
In the movies, if it feels in the movies, the turn to Darth Vader feels unearned.
It is. It's very quick. George
Clone Wars fixed it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think George decided to take the main beats of the story and put them in the movies, which is fine. But yeah, in Attack of the Clones, he kills all the Sand people, and you see him dealing with all that
That's
anger
true.
and struggle. But you lose any of his character development by making him so young in The Phantom Menace, in my opinion.
I agree. I think he should have been a teenager, like 18 or 17. Like he was
older.
He was bridging onto being an adult. Like at that one, it's like, no, we have to go through the Jedi trials and stuff. I'm like, to make it even more believable, Luke wasn't starting his Jedi training until 18, and if he were like, you're too old by 2 years, that'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But he's still gonna try. And it's the same, like, he's too old. 10 years old is too old for Jedi training in Phantom Menace. Like, how young are you training these kids? And then later they show people or kids that were definitely like 8 or 9 years old. So I was like, if they just made Anakin like a 16-year-old kid played by Leonardo DiCaprio, like they had originally planned.
That was the original plan.
Was it really?
Yeah.
He was a kid. He was like 21 years old, and he looked like he was
Young.
16.
Yeah.
And he would have been a perfect person. I love Hayden Christensen. Do
Me
not
too.
get
Me
me
too.
wrong.
Yeah,
love him to death. But like, if they wanted someone to grow with the character, they should have put an adult who looked like a child as a teenager. Then it wouldn't have made the Padme stuff so freaking creepy. You know what I'm saying? It would have fixed
She
everything.
groomed
I
him.
think the main argument for that is, or like that you can take of his path to Vader from The Phantom Menace, is the fact that he has to abandon his mother
I
as a
agree.
child.
But I love
But-
my mom, and I'm 30 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think that's like maybe part of it. But yeah, if he takes these like big time dramatic moments and just expects you to be like, okay, this is how it goes, and then the Clone Wars fleshes everything out. There's way more reasons for why he's not a master. 2, why he,
Yep.
or his slippery slope at the dark side. Not trusting the Council, very explored in the Clone Wars. So maybe we will get something like that for Luke to explain his trajectory in The Last Jedi. And I'm fine with that.
30 years.
And this is a good time to talk about it, because we are literally talking about world building and using the George Lucas philosophy, as Skyler so eloquently deemed it, and leaving room for more stories to be told. So
Exactly.
I'm not gonna shit on it for right now.
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. That's my big thing about The Last Jedi was it felt like fan fiction because Rian Johnson wasn't given the space to. And it's nothing against Rian Johnson either. I have my own qualms with like some of his choices, but like there's nothing against him. He wasn't given the opportunity to explore a story fully.
Sure.
And that's Disney's fault.
That's a weird place to be in.
Yeah.
Like,
Would you guys
you're coming-
agree with? Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, like, you're coming in inheriting it from someone that you got to give it back to. It's like it's a weird business proposition.
It's weird.
And even then, he
Weird
wasn't
that
at
they did
the
that.
original inception of it. He wasn't giving it back to JJ. He was handing it off to Colin Trevorrow.
Right.
So, but I think the two biggest faults of the sequel trilogy, and this is nothing against the cast because I actually love the characters from those movies.
Me too. Yep.
But the fact that they didn't plan it out from the beginning, biggest mistake.
Big
The
thing.
second thing is how little time they left in between all 3 movies.
I agree. There's no room for like a Clone Wars type show in between the rebellion. They could have fixed everything by saying, okay, 5 years goes by and now the Emperor's back awake. Because then they could show the Emperor and all that stuff and Exegol in a show and get even more. I just think it was a very sloppy, as like someone who's like really making a show, leaving room for us to grow forever. I was like, how are you guys just gonna like? It's like they set it down, started it up, and said, because it felt like they were going that way at the end of Last Jedi. They showed the kid with the rebellion ring on and all that stuff. I thought it was gonna be it. We're gonna get a Resistance show. We did get a Resistance show, and then it like they were just like, it felt like they gave back JJ and said, we need to move on from the sequel trilogy. It's time. We're going with Plan B, which was I really feel like the shows and like how deep we've gone into them. It feels like the Plan B. It feels like the movies aren't doing it. Awaken, what's his name from Hypersleep? We got to bring him up. It's Mikey's fucking hero with who wears the hat and doors all the time for some reason.
Oh, Cad Bane?
No, the guy who created Cad Bane.
Oh, Dave Filoni. Hell yeah.
Dave Filoni. Yeah, they're like waking him up. It's time. But it's time to give Dave his spotlight. I really felt like they were like really trying to like, no, we don't need to listen to Dave. And Dave was like, nah, come on, like, and I have my Dave too.
Dave's like, I got this.
But they were like, all right, finish up the sequels. We'll go to Dave. It really feels like they're distancing the sequels as far as possible, like really trying to distance themselves from them.
Yeah, I think Disney hated that coming down the pipe, like normal people could get force powers. I think they hated that idea. I feel like there was a whole thing. I feel like because like with Disney, it's about, you know, like childlike wonder and magic, but like giving everyone force powers, it like dilutes it. I feel like the Disney, you know, like model, you know, like making these people special, and like the Skywalker name means something, but if you got like the kid who mops can force pull a broom, then it's just like, yeah,
takes the magic out. See, I disagree. I think that scene is like, oh, well, you too can have the power. Like,
but I feel like that's what Disney was just like. Fuck no, exclusive.
I do find there was and listen, I told Mikey this over a phone call 5 years ago. I was like, my real one problem with the Force Awakens is it's not Force Awakens, the Rise of Skywalker, is it's very clearly by far the worst one, and that's to no fault of its own. It's not its fault at all. It was Disney. It was JJ. Because listen, I have this thought process. I live by it in my real life. Is if you're gonna do something, do it. So they went all this dark storytelling in Last Jedi, and they were like, yeah, let's go backwards. I'm like, no.
Yeah, finish they spent the first half of the movie
finish it up.
The first
I was like, listen, at this point, a better story, it would resolve better if we just threw away all the ideas we did have and just say, okay, this is what we got. We had one more movie. We got to make it right. And instead, they turned it around, did a bunch of fan service and, you know, quippy lines and stuff that was like, dude, I like this. It was like watching it almost felt like watching, you know, every time it's an anime or like a long TV show does like a clip show episode. It felt like an episode that was just like it was just back to back like memes and like they fly now and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I was like,
hilarious. Give Chewie a medal, call it a day.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like, I don't know. I just felt like it was a lot of posturing and not storytelling. Like all three movies were that really badly, where it was like the concept of the movies is supposed to be simple because it's supposed to be, again, going back to like this open-ended storytelling so that we can create other mediums that tell the actual morality of the stories. Like Lucas kind of got it wrong in the prequels because he went so hard at trying to like prove a point, and then he made the Jedi look like villains, not his intention to be like the Jedi are the good guys. I'm like, the Jedi are like not like they're like the Nazis of their own way. Like you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this or that. He did not intend. Like you can tell there was no intention to make the Jedi he fell back assward into making a story that was like really compelling in the prequels, where it was like these good guys are not good guys, and you actually you slowly came to like agree with Anakin until he like did a full 180. And it was like, whoa, now you're killing kids and shit, man. That's a bit much. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I was on your side, man. The Jedi are fucked. I get it, man. But like, it just,
what have I done?
Would you say that from your point of view that the Jedi are evil?
I wouldn't say that. I would say they were just as lost.
Your new empire.
Well, and like, you know, I'm never going to be behind the director's chair of Star Wars, but like,
Whoa. Hey.
Manifest.
If I was given, I'd be like, well, okay, what do you want to explore, Skyler? I'd be like, well, listen, like, it's very clear that the Clone Wars touched upon it because George Lucas, like, just Jackson Pollocked an easel. And, like, we saw some shit he didn't intend for, and it works now. I'd be like, let's explore the idea of, like, why the Jedi became weak. And why, like, it took 1,000 years from the death of Darth Bane for this crazy plot of the Sith to happen. Show me the Sith story.
Slow burn, baby.
Okay? Like, I'm so upset that Ray Stevens died, okay?
Man.
I'm so upset because, like, he was it. He was the guy that was going to be, like, the new Darth Bane. and they're gonna replace him, and it's not gonna be the same. Okay, he was gonna be Darth Bane pretty much. Like, obviously it wouldn't make sense in timeline wise, but he was the guy that was gonna explore the concepts of the Force.
Spiritually, he would have had the trajectory of I feel like they to quote Ahsoka, there's always a bit of truth in legends. That is how Dave Filoni kind of has been handling his projects since the Disney acquisition, is like cherry picking the themes or the right characters for the right time and the right story. And I do think that Baylan Skoll could have been that. And I still think that there's a chance that they recast him and do a good job.
They're going to recast him. They can't not recast him.
I'm calling it now. Disney's going to Disney. Because they know how great a job Ray Stevenson did in like Our Love, and like Skyler was saying, it's not going to feel the same. They are going to cast like a gigantic actor to play that role, like a huge. Star.
But like, who fits that mold? Like,
who's like 6'8" and like huge and like Shakespeare? Dude,
I don't know how tall he is, but with a beard, Pierce Brosnan. Niggas, James Bond. It's a huge, and that's a huge name.
Here's my concept: is
George Clooney.
I'll tell you. This is you've heard my prediction here first, folks. Dave Filoni is 100% doing Heir to the Empire right now. 100%. This is like we're getting there. Like, we're getting to like this weird adaptation of the first trilogy book ever released, because Thrawn is found in some remote place. One guy is going off to explore the Force to come back with this crazy power, and they're going back. Instead of Luke being the guy, we have Ahsoka being the guy. You know what I mean? It is what we're seeing. We are seeing what everyone's asked for, which was show us Heir to the Empire. That's what it is. And they obviously they can't recast the people because they're in their 70s and 80s now to play those characters, and one of them unfortunately passed away. But I do think we're heading towards seeing like a lot of the books come back into the forefront, because we're in that era now. Like, it's 5 years after the Empire, or the OT. Now we're seeing like the era that Heir to the Empire sits in, and it's very, very like the books, which is really interesting.
I'm gonna rein it back in just a tad, because we did kind of go off on a tangent, but I do think it's all kind of informing this general discussion about world building. How much do you think that the books and the extended material outside the movies, including like video games in Star Wars, have really fleshed this thing out to be bigger than itself, not just a movie franchise?
Like, I mean, or in general?
I mean, before we got to the Disney acquisition, really, because I think a lot of that stuff informs it. And I have my only criticism of the Disney like era world building is that I don't think they use enough legacy aliens.
I agree.
They made too many new ones, which I know sounds crazy to say, because there is always new species popping up in Star Wars, and it should continue to have that like air of like mysticism and wonder. But like, I don't think there's a single Twi'lek in the entire sequel trilogy. And it's just like,
oh yeah, that is weird.
Like, and they were like a very present like alien.
Nah, bro, it was driving a ship at the end of Rise of Skywalker when everybody showed up.
Oh fuck, Matt is actually definitely right.
Damn,
about that.
dude,
like 100% right. That's like deep cut. He knows that Hera is in that final scene. So honestly, kudos, Matt. But
the ghost is there, dog.
The ghost is there. He's not wrong.
Ghost is amongst the crowd.
This is what I'll tell you. Speaking of like going back to world building, Star Wars again being the most. It is the most influential like media, cinematic universe. It's nothing comes close. Yeah, Marvel makes more money, objectively, because of how much they put out. It'll never touch it. It'll never touch it.
Star Wars.
Because it video games. For example, it was for every one of those video games. Yeah, there was movie tie-ins. Mm-hmm. But there's also so many original stories that are in video games. Knights of the Old Republic, Jedi Fallen Order, a bunch of like the Clone Wars, Republic Commando, or the Kyle Katarn series, Shadows of the Empire, movie tie-in, but it was at one point canon between episodes 5 and 6 on N64. Rogue Squadron tells us the story between, a lot of the stuff. So, like, there are so many movie tie-ins that explore the world versus, like, other movies, which is, You know, like I think of Harry Potter, for example. What are the Harry Potter games, except for the newest one, is like, it's the movie, but there's a few more mini games in between each scene. That's all it is. It's just like, oh, now you go collect me some jelly beans outside the hut. And I'm like, great, that's wasted. I want to get to the story. Versus like any Star Wars game, Bounty Hunter with Jango Fett and why he chose to have a clone made of him. It's all explained, and it's all beautifully explained. And it's like I said, and we all know Marvel tie-in video games are absolute dog shit. And
I think they stopped making them after Thor, games. So you're good.
Like it was like we're like, no, we're not doing that, and they're like, yeah, it is like literally like. You guys remember back in the day when Burger King made those 3 video games that you could get with the kids' meals? There was like Sneak King, and there was like 2 other ones. But it's these vapid video games, and they're meme worthy now. But they were just like these stupid. Maybe they made like a couple, like $50,000 to make, and then they just gave them for free. Awesome that a fast food chain would do that. But that's what those games are. They're just like it's just extra media to consume
because they know people will buy it.
Exactly,
so like, just throw it out. Throw it out there.
And I've always felt that, you know, video games and the books were like works of art. Like there's a lot of good ones, like Nightwing or what's it, Death Trooper, which is it follows the story of Project Nightwing in Star Wars, the zombie stuff. That book is incredible for the first half. Then Han Solo shows up, going back to world building to keep things on topic. Imagine a really well done story, and then they bring in a character that doesn't die, so now you know the ending of the story halfway through a book. Well, at least this guy's going to survive. It's Han Solo. You know what I mean? Like,
do you think they could have avoided that by ambiguously bringing them in and then revealing at the end that it was Han Solo?
That's the smart thing to do. Yes. It's
like, hey, buddy, what was your name?
So it's
the name's Han.
Name's Han. Name's Solo. Han Solo.
If you've never read Death Troopers, it is one of the greatest. Like, I think, in terms of like not Nazi, it does follow the Empire, but in terms of like zombie media, it is one of the best. It's so well written for being a zombie. It's like pulpy, but like it's scary. There's a lot of scary parts in it, and like. It's really interesting, and then they bring Han Solo in and ruin it, which now lets me transition to the thing I want to talk about Andor.
Ooh, what a segue!
It's exactly what I want to talk about. It's a perfect example. The reason Andor is so good is because the creator who just created the movie, that movie just came out,
fucking sucks.
I know, but I'm just saying it's the same guy that made Andor and Rogue One. The reason why Andor is so fucking good is because he sat everyone down and said, we all like Star Wars, right? And they're like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, we're here to make Andor in the Star Wars universe. We are going to respect this world. We are not here to tell a fan service story.
Doing our own thing.
And that's bringing Han Solo in halfway through an already good book, fan service. Bringing back every fucking character that was still alive in Rise of Skywalker.
Fan service.
Like, and to Rian Johnson's defense, he tried to do the same thing. He tried to introduce ideas that were like this. The problem is he didn't show the universe of Star Wars respect. I feel there's a lot of like disrespect towards a lot of the things that people loved in Star Wars and Last Jedi. Versus Andor, that is interesting the whole way through. It pays homage to many beautiful things. Like if you didn't know, the Sith assassin armor is sitting in what's his name?
Yeah, it's in Luthen's antique shop.
That is there. That's from a
so are the Mortis stones from Rebels, the hand Johns.
Little tiny things like that, and they didn't show a fucking stormtrooper till the very end because everyone knows when the stormtrooper shows up, it changes the whole feel of a story.
Mm-hmm.
It introduced all these ideas. It always made it feel like it was right for the time of the universe, which goes back to my original point. When you enter Star Wars, you are entering a galaxy far, far away. So anything can happen. but it needs to feel like it's Star Wars because you have a suspension of disbelief that it's Star Wars. You're like, I'm in Star Wars, so would this happen in Star Wars, or would it be Uncanny Valley? This is kind of lame stuff. You know what I mean? That's why I like Andor.
I think that those are all really good points, and they do an aspect of world building within Andor that feels more real than other things, is not quite as campy. I say this with a lot of love for every Star Wars project, really. That's true. And they also, I don't know if it was the first mention of coffee being calf, but it's probably first like mainstream thing, right? But the thing that with Andor,
Tim with the calf from Andor.
Tim with the calf. I'm so glad he gets cooked. That guy sucked.
Dude, Tim fucking sucks.
Tim fucking sucks.
Dude.
What they really, I feel like, capitalized on in that show is it's an HBO quality show because it feels real. So I can objectively say that it is the best thing that they've done. Subjectively, it has not very many of the things that I love about Star Wars, so it's not my favorite. But I can respect. I can respect where you're coming from, and I do hope season 2 starts to bring us closer to what's going on. But it spoon fed us all of these Star Wars things while developing such really interesting and unique characters. And not to mention, they do such a good job in Andor of introducing you to characters that you should fucking hate.
I love it, dude. I love it.
Cyril eating cereal.
Dude. Deidre, fucking
fucking Deidre, bro.
Mon Mothma's entire family.
Yeah, her fucking douchebag husband with his top knot.
They did such a good job making it feel like it was like a Game of Thrones thing with her family. Like there was all this weird political intrigue. I was like, and it was all sassy.
Bro.
It was
yeah, I was gonna say that scene when she thought she was about to get caught, when they were at the having little wine and tea and shit, and the husband she thinks he knows and she don't know if he's part of it. Now I was wired for fucking stress in that scene. I was like, she about to get caught. No.
I want to talk about something painful to me. Speaking of world building, they fucked up the Boba Fett show to the point where I was blown away by it. I was blown away. I was watching. I was like, dude, Mando season 2 is not even I feel like Mando season 2 is season 1.1 because they don't show the Mandalorian at all. He's just there on the side while these other stories are getting cooked up. Like Boba Fett. Oh, look, it's spawning off. Look, the Ahsoka show's spawning off. We're seeing all these weird spin-offs happening in real time, but
it's how Dave does it. That's how Dave does it, though.
I know.
I'm sorry.
What Dave does is take 2 action figures and smash them together like he's a fucking 5-year-old.
Oh yeah, and it makes magic. I don't know what you want from me, Skyler.
Here's the problem. That seems like a negative thing to say, but it's true. There's 2 kinds of ways to do Star Wars. There's full-on fan service, or there's what Andor is. This is this is our take on the universe. It's when we do these weird middle things. There was a weird take on Boba Fett, right? But it was filled with fan service. Therefore, you can't combine the 2. But anything Filoni does, it's this all makes sense. It's fan servicey, but it's all there. It all makes sense, and that's why it's so his work is so good. First season of Mandalorian's so good because it was a different spin on the universe that felt like it was familiar. I don't know. I don't think fans, except for Dave Filoni, should be allowed to make Star Wars. That's a real thought process because they just can't help themselves but put their favorite character into the movie.
That makes sense.
Or find a proxy for it. Like Mando is a proxy for Boba Fett, right?
It hurts my heart to say that, but if Disney were to listen to this show, if I had one thing they would listen to me
when Disney listens to this show,
I would say just stop letting fans make the movie. Stop letting them make it. They don't Taika Waititi's
got handed over to a Star Trek fan.
No, not even that. Like I said, Taika Waititi gets it because I think Taika Waititi's I don't think he's that big of a fan. I just think he likes it. I think he
just likes making movies. He just likes making movies.
Star Wars has the right amount of quirkiness that makes
it works.
It works for Taika. Yeah. And there's something, I don't know if you guys have spent time watching the Disney Gallery episodes. They did a fucking 8-part like making of the first season of Mandalorian.
Yeah,
and they do it. Yeah, it's fantastic. And Roundtable, Taika's talking about the humor of Star Wars and how it believes in itself. And like that is something that you can't fake. You either get it or you don't. And I think he gets that. And that's probably why Mando's season finale is so strong and he did it. And they were like, let's give this guy a fucking movie. Who knows if it'll ever get made. But it's also right. It's also one of those things where I'm like, people have been hating the last 2 Thor movies, and whatever your opinion on Taika is, that's fine. But I just think that
Ragnarok.
They're so fundamentally.
One of the,
I love Ragnarok too.
That's top 5.
They're
Marvel movie.
Those movies are so fundamentally different than the vibe that you get from Star Wars that I have literally zero concerns if his movie gets made. I think it'll be fine. I think he'll add in just enough weird stuff, and hopefully, the story group throws in aliens that we do recognize, because I think you can do fan service without fucking hitting you over the head with it like a baseball bat.
Or smashing action figures together, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Listen, man, Cad Bane didn't belong there, okay? It was like a total fucking whack scene, okay? I'm sorry.
We deserved Cad Bane.
No, in Boba Fett, I was like, yeah, I remember watching that, and there's a couple things in Boba Fett I need to talk about, okay? The moped thing, that was dumb.
Bad.
Okay?
The Vespa Rangers?
Bad.
They went so
Power Rangers
slow.
Vespa.
But
yes, that's my problem.
Thundercat was awesome, though.
Thundercat's great, and I like the Vespa characters. The chase scene is
so bad.
Is maybe the worst filmed thing for Star Wars ever.
Nah, bro, hold on. I gotta give you grief. I gotta give you grief on one part.
Okay.
When the Vespa Rangers were getting into that firefight, and the one with the cloak
when you did that
dumbass spin. When you did that dumbass spin, you're in a firefight. Why are you spinning to then shoot? And you
it's
were
a
already
cool trick.
No, my man's was facing the direction that he wanted to shoot, spun around to then shoot.
Dog, he invoked the Anakin Skywalker method. How dare you? Spinning's a cool trick. All right,
with the lightsaber, yes. In a gunfight, if you about to turn your back to the man you trying to shoot in a gunfight, dog, that shit bothered me so much.
I'm telling you, like, but there's parts of Boba Fett that I just absolutely adore, like how they definitely took Patton Oswalt's like filibuster and
Parks and
Rec, and they took it, they did it verbatim. As I know that was they all sat down and said this is gonna be funny, like, and it was so fun. And then like him riding the fucking Rancor, shit's so fun. And like what's his name playing the Rancor tamer?
Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
It was literally there was so many great things in Boba Fett that it felt like campy, which. The problem I have with that is, like, I love the idea that Boba Fett becomes a good guy, but I wish he was more like a Punisher type good guy. I wish he was like, I have problems now. I'm mad. I'm going to fucking kill everybody because of it. You know what I mean?
That's fair, but
I do love him.
I think it all makes sense at the end of the day.
I do love that too.
Yeah, right. When you realize that Robert Rodriguez made it, and the Book of Boba Fett is essentially just the Star Wars version of a Spy Kids movie, then everything kind of makes sense.
That's such a good way to look at it. It's like, yeah, it's
Spy Kids.
Dog,
so
it is
weird.
Though.
It like
You're not
it's
wrong.
so weird when he's teaching.
You're not wrong at all.
He's teaching the Sand People like they're fucking stupid. That part got on my nerves because if you ever played Knights of the Republic, you know the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders
people.
have such beautiful. They have such a beautiful society, and it's like they're so deep, and they're just like. And they show them like they're fucking like it was Dances with Wolves for a minute. I was like, what the fuck is? I was like, they're not stupid, man. They're not like dumb. They're just they don't like. It's their planet, dude. Like, I don't know, but I like that he was on their side. But it was weird. It really was Dances with Wolves. Like that's really what like he was saved by a bunch of like natives, and he taught them things, and they saved him, and it was this weird. Then he goes back, and then he's like now he takes over. What's his fucking name? Who took over for
Jabba.
Jabba. It's such a wild story that I was like, it feels like the most Star Wars, to be honest with you. It feels like George Lucas would have made that if it feels like the most George Lucas thing, honestly. If you think about it, I feel like Boba Fett's the George. I think he actually wrote it. I think he just put Robert.
he just turned it in anonymously. He was like, to whom it may concern.
Written by Lord Jukas, you know what I mean? Like,
You're George Lucas.
That'd be hilarious.
Oh man!
I had a proxy. He's like, "Yo, I need you to turn this in for me, please."
Yeah. Oh, and you see, it rhymes. Cad Bane is a bad guy, and he's mysterious, just like Boba.
And then
it's
Cobb
like
Vanth
poetry.
is the good guy. I'm fucking two names in the same
Bad
show.
Kane, the good guy. His name's Bad Kane, but he's actually the good guy. See what I mean? Like it's.
I see what you did there.
You see, Cobb Vanth is the good, the Mandalorian is the bad, and Cad Bane is the ugly.
In a town called Tombstone.
It's called Freetown.
Tombstone.
I got this Mandalorian armor from a fucking guy, and it's just like I'm like, oh my god. It's I don't know, like the problem.
No Timothy Oliphant slander around here.
Yeah, we don't do that around here.
I actually love him, but
we're too big of fans, I think.
He's like the interesting version of Billy Bob Thornton. You know what I mean?
Oh god!
Shit. Wow.
I love Billy Bob Thornton too.
Mind blown. Mind fucking blown.
He's a bad Santa, dude. Fuck.
That's hilarious.
Dude, Bad Santa 2 is definitely going to be Timothy Oliphant for sure.
I feel like there is a Bad Santa 2. I'm almost positive there was a
Bad
sequel.
Santa 3 is definitely going to be Timothy Oliphant.
Facts. It's going to be his little brother.
100%.
Badder Santa.
Badder Santa.
His name's definitely going to be Nick.
So here's something. Here's something to actually to make sense of all this is I also find the problem with a lot of the shows is they are exploring way too much, and it's starting to pull back the veil a little too much on Star Wars. And when they really get deep into some certain ideas, it gets, I'm like, this is actually really stupid. It was so cool when it was like referenced, and then they show it too deeply. The Clone Wars made sense, but like there's little things I was like, this is just dumb.
I'm gonna respectfully challenge.
Okay.
Shout out to Yali all caps.
Not all things, by the way. Not all things.
Yeah, some things. I feel you. I think that the way, and the Avatar: The Last Airbender is all like this, and Dave Filoni was the showrunner on that show as well.
The M. Night Shyamalan movie?
No.
That's crazy, man.
But
my favorite movie.
Everything feels unimportant until you get to kind of like the end of the story, when all of the threads start to weave together, and like these plot points and characters who you never saw like in your head interacting at the beginning of things end up coming and crossing paths and really implicating. A great example of this is the complete separation of the Mandalorian plot and the Darth Maul plot, and then eventually bringing them together to be the capstone for not just Mandalore, not just Maul, but also Ahsoka. Like, those are all things that you don't see them coming to a head, but when they do get to a head and you're like, oh wow, so that one stupid fucking episode about Prime Minister Almec poisoning the kids to save money on Mandalore actually ended up having huge implications for the fucking Siege of Mandalore, being the person who was the figurehead for Maul. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now, right? We're seeing all of these extra plot threads. They feel extra. Some people might call them filler, but I think that they're going to eventually lead to the heir to the empire that you were suggesting, Skyler.
I agree.
In a more meaningful way. Like, I think that movie's going to mean so much more to us because of the Mando timeline and all the shows that are kind of like building up to it.
And that's the thing, timeline. So for example, first off, I agree with what you're saying. And what I say, it's very specific little things. I'm not sure a good example at this time. If it comes to my head, I'll just stop everybody and say, this
I'm about to say, because you have my timeline. What example?
But timelines. I heard, and this is total posturing. I have no idea how I feel about this. But they said, like, there was something in Rebels. I never finished Rebels, by the way, everybody. I'm still working on it.
You have to.
But there's something about like split timelines kind of talked about in there. And there is some kind of like rumor floating, and it could just be something. I do think there's some weight to it as the more they dive into this era of Star Wars, the post OT pre sequels, that we're seeing a different timeline, and they just don't show it. They're just never going to show that we're in a different timeline. But I feel like that they've rationalized it by saying the sequel trilogy stuff that happened because Ahsoka died, and that's why she's not there. That's why Luke and that's why Grogu aren't all there in come that time, because Grogu is supposed to live 1,000 years, so he's dead in sequel trilogy, or he's existing in a separate timeline. Do I think this is true? I have no idea. Do I think it's a good idea? Maybe, but there is. I would say, because of the zeitgeist currently in all stories, spoiler, Starfield, Marvel, everybody is really loving this multiverse theory thing. And I said they touched upon it in Rebels. And the thing with to give Mikey some weight to what he said, a lot of the time in storytelling, you are introducing plot points so that when they actually come to fruition later, that you have you have like this
good old callback, baby.
Well, callback, and you also have like the rights to be like, well, you saw this coming. Don't you remember this thing we did?
Remember this?
Yeah. So like, and then it's pretty much telling the viewer they're stupid if they weren't paying attention. Not meanly, but like you should have paid attention because this was explored heavily in this one episode, and you just weren't paying attention to it. And that's, but yeah. So I don't know where this plot was going, but to make a point of it. We talked about like how we left everything open to the imagination. This kind of theory that we have, like there's maybe a multiple timeline thing, that couldn't have happened without a universe like Star Wars, because it's so open ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And Matt, I feel like you have a point on the tip of your tongue, so I'm gonna just say that.
I was trying to get to the end so I could hear what you had to say.
You go ahead, bro.
I just wanted to say, like, I think it's been confirmed that the world between worlds does not alter the timeline.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that they've already come out and said that. And they also, I feel like what we're seeing is why the First Order came to power, and why Thrawn is not around, and why some of the other players I think are not going to be around. I think we're going to see there's no Mandalorians that show up in the sequel trilogy, and I think that something's going to come to a head where a lot of people, there's going to be another quote unquote tragedy in the galaxy, whether it happens and it involves the OT characters or not is still to be determined, but I think that ultimately there's a story to be told there, and they're going to fit it into the timeline. But Matt, go ahead. What were you?
So I was 1,000% going to just talk about the world between worlds not being like a multiversal thing. But what you just said made another thought process pop into my head. I don't know why, like, it's not ever been, I don't think it is on the table, but I feel like it should kind of be. Like, Star Wars really could get out of its own way by, like, undoing something that they've always done. We've talked about this, that, like, Star Wars has a really weird habit of making a very vast galaxy seem very small. Like, when people run away to a planet, they get found in the same day. Like, you could have been anywhere on that planet, but they knew where to dock, like, that you were in a close enough proximity. Could Star Wars just simplify an explanation and be like, the Mandalorian, something maybe did come to it, and they just fucking hauled ass across the universe, and they're just nowhere near like what's going on right now? Like, I know it's like super simplification, but like, you don't have to essentially kill off everybody that way. Like, because Disney's always going to Disney. Like with that was literally their explanation for why Captain Marvel hasn't been around for any of the movies. She was like, yo, it's a big universe and not everybody has you to help. That's how they explained it away. Like plot protection. Oh, it's a galaxy out there. She said. Exactly. So like Star Wars could essentially, for not everybody, but maybe like the Mandalorians, maybe not like the Grogus and the Jedis who be able to feel issues, but like the Mandalorians could just be somewhere else.
That's true. And I think what
We're
really
fighting the Yuzan Vong.
There you go. I think what would really fix just the problems that Star Wars is facing is, for the love of fucking science, can we just go somewhere in the timeline that is not near the Skywalker saga?
Can we please go back to the High Republic? That's what I want to see.
They are doing that. They're doing.
I know the books exist, but
but the Acolyte is a show that's coming out.
Good, because
it's going to follow the Sith. Actually, well, there's going to be a lot of Jedi in it, but
it's
the
time.
Sith. Yeah, I agree. I think it's ripe for this storytelling, and I do want to see things from a villain's perspective. I think. Listen, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Infinity War not one of the best Marvel movies because Thanos is the protagonist of that film?
Yes, it's incredible.
Right. So. Yeah, I think
same with Black Panther. Killmonger was such a great, anti-hero, antagonist type of situation that
you're almost following their stories.
Yeah,
right?
you follow their stories. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be Sheev, right? But show me what. Okay, obviously, we eventually get to Darth Plagueis, who trains him, right? But there are other Sith along the way after Darth Bane that have to be there. Bane is canon, there's
canon. Yeah. I think his story is too. They haven't came out and said it, but have you read the Darth Bane trilogy?
I've been told that after Heir of the Empire, it's the best.
It might be better than Heir of the Empire because it's not set. It doesn't because again, going back to suspensions of disbelief, Heir of the Empire falls into a trap of it being these are main characters that we know. If they do something we don't like, we detach from the story. That's not a problem in Darth Bane because not only is Revan and all them not in it, but no one's in it. It's Darth Bane and Darth Xana, and that's it. Everyone else, nobody knows of them. There's no hints at other universe or other stories. It's a total. This is their story, and we can do whatever we want because we don't have to worry about us pissing off a fan base because whatever they do, we have a suspension of disbelief that they're allowed to do it. Because we don't have Luke who sacrificed everything to give up being a Jedi. You know what I mean? It's just, you know what I mean? Because on one side those things are good, a good idea, Rian Johnson. Same time, bad idea, Rian Johnson. If you have Mark Hamill saying it's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea at that point. You know what I mean?
That's someone. I guess someone who intimately understands the character, and it's funny that. We brought up Darth Bane. I think it was almost by accident, but I did look up tenets of world building kind of prior to this. I know I sent the list over to you guys just to kind of have a basis of things. Please, but one of those things is history. And when you're playing in Star Wars that has that vast timeline, the history is such a big part of it. Yep. Do you think it's the most important aspect to world building is the fact that there are just you can have these ancient stories affect what's happening in the modern time. I mean, the whole theory of the chosen, or the prophecy of the chosen one, is what kind of guides Anakin's quote unquote hero's journey, even though it goes backwards. But I think that might be really the thing that sets things apart. And I'm going to segue here because I really do want to talk about this, Skyler. You have built your own little universe in your audio podcast, Omega Star 7. Was history the first thing that you thought of? What was the basis that you kind of went off there? And could you kind of just this is your chance to plug and kind of explain your thought process here. If you're trying to grab listeners from our audience, tell us what was your initial thought process? How did it build? And what other influences kind of outside Star Wars really helped you develop that kind of?
So I'm going to answer your first question because it's going to really help understand, help. So the thing about history in the world and stuff, it's usually never the first thing. For Lord of the Rings it was, but for most things it's not. Because the problem is usually when you write a giant lore Bible, it gets in the way of the story. So I used to do this thing on TikTok where I taught D&D, right, for new game masters and stuff. So one thing I was very, very adamant about speaking about a lot of different times is reactivity. So in fantasy tabletop role-playing games, you have players who like to be called what we call a murder hobo, right? Which is someone who they just do evil shit because it's,
learned about that in the Caustic Phoenix episode.
I'm given any chance to do whatever I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is be evil, right? So,
murder, death, kill.
What a good storyteller does, and it's seen the most in homebrew D&D campaigns or just tabletop role-playing games in general, because we get to tell a story in the world. The story and the world are two different things that reside in the same sphere. So a world reacts. A world is a living thing. A story is a specific thing. A story is told inside of a world that must react to that story. So if a player's killing people because they're just doing whatever, what would a world do? They'd hire someone to go kill them, and that makes total sense. And they're like, I have suspended my disbelief. Why did this level 20 bounty hunter come and kill me and my party? Well, you murdered an entire town. What did you think was going to happen? You're just going to get to keep doing it? The world reacts. So when you're telling a story, at least everyone's going to be different, but when I told my story, especially when we redid the story with Ballad of the Outlander, we told a story. We kept it very here, and then we would say, okay, here's a plot point that drove this part forward. So this one character, I'm trying to think of a really good example. So like, okay, for a great example, Slip, the main character of the Ballad of Outlander, where one of the three main characters was in a relationship with a very famous, space, science fiction musician named Moxie Rebel. So Moxie ends up being a really big part of the show, who she and him are actually talking to each other, but she stays behind a mask, never knows about it until much, much later in the show. She just pretty much hides behind being like this masked figure who tells him what to do, and all of his choices and her choices are playing off each other because of their history. So when it became relevant, we had to think, what was their history? A lot of the time is if you get stuck on the lore itself, it will kind of ruin the story because you're like, well, now I have to have an exposition on this. I'm like, no, you don't. This doesn't make sense. So either we change it or we make it make sense through dialogue. So it's us creating a story and using the history of the world to make the story make sense, because they're in like this symbiotic relationship with each other. So the world reacts, and the world reacts because of its history. If any of that made any sense.
It did.
It did.
Was
Yeah.
that the answer? That was just the answer to the first question.
I feel like we're getting like a fucking lecture here on.
I'm here for it.
But I'm not complaining. I'm just I wasn't ready for such kind of, I guess, so reactionary
it's
nature.
reactionary storytelling. Yeah.
Right. I guess I've never really like thought about it like living and breathing in like that sense. But would you say that there are like, I know you're a big fan of Cowboy Bebop, and Matt, obviously, who is on our sister podcast, Dragon Ball for Life, is huge into anime. And I feel like those worlds are all built, many of them are built out very well, just off the top of my head, like the universe of not just Dragon Ball, but like kind of like Naruto and My Hero Academia have these like really well thought out things. And I think one of the things that I've been noticing about the difference between manga and anime storytelling versus the science fiction that we're kind of used to is the start and end points are very clearly defined. And Matt, I'm actually just going to hand this off to you here. Do you think that reactionary like storytelling is something that lives and breathes in things like Bleach and the shonen like anime more so than it does in those defined storylines? And how much do you think like Western media suffers from not having those defined start and end points?
So when we're saying that our media does have the start and end points,
it doesn't. I feel like anime usually does, but we're shown instances, and I think that the ones that have the most staying power kind of like exist in the universes that continuously move, like Dragon Ball, Bleach, Naruto. One Piece is another huge example. I know that we haven't gotten like really into it, but
so I might be taking start and end point way too literal. Are you saying like literally like the start of a? I'm
saying like
show versus the
Death
end of the show?
Note. Like Death Note has like a clearly defined like narrative from like the first
okay,
right.
Gotcha.
Whereas like the shonen anime
gotcha.
kind of like continuously go, and the worlds are like reacting. They're more. I think that those are maybe closer to what we experience as a whole, but they tend to resonate more with audiences.
I get what
However,
you're saying.
I feel like the strength of some of the other anime we enjoy is because it has those defined things.
I have an answer for you.
Yeah, hit me.
My personal opinion, when it comes to anime and manga, because most animes are all just derivatives of the manga. The manga came first, anime was second. I personally believe that they're able to pull that off because they cheat. Because with the manga, you're only getting one chapter a month. They can literally read the pulse of the room in a month's space. They could put a chapter out, literally see what the people are feeling, maybe poach some ideas and some comments, change, like totally pivot, be like, oh, they didn't react to that character being like this. Let's make them like that. Skyler, kind of like exactly what you were saying with your two characters who had like a symbiotic relationship. You either had to change it or make it make sense. I feel like mangas do that. I feel like they're reactive in the aspect that like they're checking the pulse. Like prime example, Gohan literally was supposed to inherit the franchise of Dragon Ball, but because of a fan voting where he finished 4th, they scuttled all of that, and he's been a bitch for 30 years.
Ever since, baby.
And that was off of a fan poll. They was like, damn, how's that going to be our lead? And he's the 5th, because Future Trunks. And like, yeah, he was 4th. I'm sorry, he's 4th. Yeah, it was Goku, Vegeta, Future Trunks, Gohan was how the poll came out. And this was like on the heels of Gohan getting Super Saiyan 2. So like they hit the panic button. They was like, damn, like they're not going to buy these comics. They're not going to buy the manga. They're not going to buy the merch because their 4th favorite character is now leading the show. It's going to be like, oh, bring Goku back type of situation. It's like with Pokemon. Like you could never not have Ash be the star of Pokemon.
They do now. And it's the end of Pokemon.
Yeah, and exactly. Ash finally won, became the greatest trainer of all time, and the show's over. Like they're done. Like
I'm totally agree with that. Like it's crazy. Like and you'd be surprised just how similar Star Wars and anime actually is. Like when you look at it from like me, who's making a show, inspired by Star Wars and literal 90s anime, their similarities of their storytelling is crazy because like they both tell their story with room. It's like getting a cup of coffee and leaving room for cream. You know what I mean? Like they don't fill it to the top.
That's an amazing
perfect analogy.
Yeah, I love that.
We live in this weird, or it's this weird storytelling where we can do whatever we want. I mean, Akira Toriyama is a great example of someone who just does whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
Suspension of disbelief. So I'll never forget, like, I'm of the mindset that Dragon Ball is the best one. OG, it's so well told, start to finish. Love every second of it. There's emotional moments that are really emotional. Like, I cried when Goku saw his grandpa again. That was a part in my life. That's the only part in that when Android 13, the Frankenstein looking motherfucker, that guy.
Android 8.
Yeah, Android 8.
Yeah,
everything he would say, beautiful, thought-provoking, kind. When he met the guy that is not a Native American, but is really a Native American, in the tower and all that stuff, and like him getting to the lookout and all these incredible moments are beautiful. And then and then we just introduced aliens, and then everyone's like, okay, fuck it, and then that was it, because there's so much Dragon Ball Z. There's so much. There's like 186 episodes, right?
Yeah.
And it might be more. I think that one might be in the 200s, but
probably.
There's so much that, in these episodes of like 90% screaming and yelling at each other, there's 10% of like storytelling where they're able to create a moment that builds upon the lore, and it's so fucking silly all the time. And I love it. I find that Dragon Ball Z is the perfect satire on the fighting genre. I really do. I find like it's mostly a giant joke show that is just hilarious and fun, and it's what shonen is at its heart. And that's what I love about it. Like, it's not overthinking. Now, to the Death Note point that Mikey said, animes, how many episodes is Death Note?
39.
So what I've learned about animes very recently, actually, is Do you know why shows that are 26 to 52 episodes are so well done? I looked into this. I was like, why? Why is Cowboy Bebop so good? And same with Samurai Champloo. It's because 26 episodes is a year because TV shows in Japan run for 6 months. So when they say you have 26 episodes, they're saying you get one season. So tell your fucking story right. And it's like the exact opposite of like what Dragon Ball Z is because they're given an end. They're like, you have 26 episodes. We're done. Space Dandy is a great example. Space Dandy is probably my favorite anime.
It's a great show.
And because it ends in this weird place where it began. And it spoiler alert, it all comes back around to the beginning. Like legitimately back to the beginning, and he starts life over again. Where he like at the very beginning, but the joke, and I know this is like the most hilarious part about Space Dandy is it's very sexually oriented, and he at the first he's talking about what butts, and then in the last episode he's back to the beginning, he's talking about thighs now, and it's again a satire, but what it's telling you it's what they said was like we could literally do this show again and change it all, and it would make perfect sense. Because it's this idea that time is cylindrical. Beautiful storytelling, 26 episodes long. Samurai Champloo, there was no like shonen. We want this to go as long as possible to sell stuff. It was, you have 26 episodes, Samurai Champloo, Trigun, Outlaw Star. You have 6 months to tell your story and that's it. And it's like the exact opposite of like Dragon Ball Z, because that was just we got to wring this as long as we fucking can. So keep going, make it, and because of that, they have to find ways to make that world seem alive and engaging. You know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, now in Super you're seeing so many different universes, right? But it also feels like this might, I don't think it's blasphemy. It's actually just, I think, a point that Matt and Travis make a lot. The universe is bigger than its own britches right now, and they're not touching on all these things. They just keep it so focused on Goku and Vegeta that it feels like all of this world building is for naught.
I love it though. I love it, dude. I love Goku and Vegeta so fucking much. I love those characters, and I hope they never go away.
They're not going to.
As someone who I watched my character, the character that I designed, voiced, did all this stuff. I said, it's episode 30. We're done with him. And I watched him get a happy ending and just go off into the void. And there's something cathartic about that. And then there's the other character. This is a spoiler for people who like my show who are listening. That one character that everyone loves is going to be in the show for as long as we humanly can keep him in the show. Because he's that type of character. Some characters like Spike Spigal just... They have a shelf life. They have a story to tell, and then they're done. There's no reason to keep them around because they told a really good story. Good example, Gurren Lagann. What's his fucking name with the fucking sunglasses?
Oh, Kamina. Right?
7 episodes. 7 episodes, and he changed the trajectory. Yeah. He changed the trajectory of the show in 7 episodes. There are characters like that. Gohan, unfortunately, became that character, but instead of killing him off because no one wants to see Gohan die, he's just too much of a wet blanket to be the
castrated him.
You know what I mean? He's too and I love him. I love Goku. I love Gohan. I feel like he got the shaft. I mean, I love the Saiyaman stuff. It's hilarious. I loved him in Piccolo when he was a kid learning like that, like all those episodes that like weren't in the manga, but they had filler to make. All those stories about him finding the robot in the cave and all that stuff is just incredible.
Fighting the dinosaur.
And, right, dude. When his dinosaur gets eaten. I think about all that stuff.
On the Journey to Namek, the Space Pirate Kid episode.
Dude,
it's the most random episode of
love it.
Ever. Yeah.
It's so well done. And,
it was a great episode, but it's so random.
That's... Anime is weird, and when it comes to Star Wars, that's what they're doing with Star Wars. They're like, how long can we get this to go? So they're creating these like plot points based off of plot holes made in the story. It's the same in Omega Star 7. We're always constantly referencing things that seem cool, but in the moment we just wrote them to make like this line of dialogue doesn't make sense. So we need to create an event that happened in dialogue that will change how we view the story. So the Clone Wars, how did you and my dad know each other? We fought in the Clone Wars together. It's a fucking total throwaway line, but it spawned 3 movies in a 7-season show. It's
Genius.
It is what it is. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing. You know, it seems genius. It seems like it was, but the whole idea. The greatest piece of advice I've ever gotten was from a TV show, Futurama. If you do things right, no one will ever know you did anything at all.
That's a bar.
You want to create a story and never ever.
I know Philip J. Fry didn't drop that bar.
That was God.
There you go. I'm about to say Bender
sure it
doesn't have
wasn't
that type
Zoidberg?
of wisdom.
Bender was there for it, but yeah, there's this thing about posturing in storytelling that people need to avoid, and they did a really bad job of avoiding it in sequel trilogy. Except for The Force Awakens, where nothing felt like it was some kind of like dual meeting. You know what I mean? Like, but I felt like that. Like, I felt like Rian Johnson, with every single choice he made, was trying to say something. The only thing your story should be saying is that it's a good fucking story, and if it's good enough, people will fill the void. It's the great example, The Matrix. The Matrix is a great first fucking movie. And then the Wachowskis lost their fucking minds and put way too much effort into like putting in some kind of like moral plot when it was all there in the beginning. It was like, this is what the story is. We know what it is. What is real is real. Even if it's not real, doesn't that make it real? And all this kind of crazy like psycho.
Making him Jesus in Revolutions was a bit much.
It's too much, and people need to know when to like just back off. And I felt like the sequel trilogy did a really bad job because it all had to mean something, and I'm like, it doesn't have to mean anything, because the meaning is found along the way, just like the friends. You know what I mean? The real journey is the real journey.
It's not the destination; it's the friends you make along the way.
It's the morals we tell along the way. You know what I mean? Like Luke, who gave up everything. Gave up mastering his Jedi training in like 2 days. I can't believe, you know.
Time on Dagobah is undefined.
Well,
2 days, 3
here's the
years.
thing. If you watch, and this goes right back to theories, they said they traveled to Bespin in sublight. They were going slower than the speed of light. So that is very slow. It could have taken them weeks to get to Bespin.
I hope there was a shower on the Falcon, dude.
There's definitely a shower on the Falcon. Unless it came off with that weird fucking
Yeah, Solo was smashing ass before he met Leia. There's a shower on the Falcon.
Well, and my favorite part about the Solo movie.
Bodies.
This is my favorite part about the Solo movies. They showed a fucking bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
They showed the Millennium Falcon's bedroom.
There you go.
Here's a closet with capes and stuff. I was like, yes, this is what Star Wars was missing a lot of the time. Was it's so fucking fast paced. We don't get to live in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
and that's why
everything
I think that's why the
quickly.
shows are so much better.
We have
format
time
for storytelling in Star Wars because
it was always meant to be a TV show. I've had the thought process that ever since the dawn of man, Star Wars should have been a TV show. I'm glad it wasn't, because we wouldn't have the TV shows, because it'd be done by now. But I'm glad because it would have kept going into the 90s.
Well, all right, 45 seasons is enough, guys.
Yeah, like it would have been done. So I'm glad that they are like
not Law and Order.
I don't know. Doctor Who's still going.
Well, they're doing these limited series now that like tie into each other, which is extremely smart, because you get to pick and choose what you want to watch one day. In 20 years from now, there's like 100 Star Wars shows, each with like 32 episodes. You don't want to watch the Jedi stuff, you skip the Ahsoka, you skip the Acolyte. You want to see the underbelly stuff, you go Andor, Mandalorian, call it a day. You know what I mean? That's like the beautiful part about Star Wars. They're creating a library of TV shows all set in one universe, and that in itself is beautiful. And that's like, you know, we shit talk Disney, but that was a genius plot for them, instead of doing this weird streamline of movies, because movies are streamlined. There's no way around movies. Once you make movies, it's a straight or backwards line. Like that's it. You go back, you go forward. There is no like, because if we want to explore this random thing, it's going to be a one-shot movie. But like Solo and Rogue One, these one-shot movies, no one's going to watch them because they don't say Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like people watch them, but they're not the same as watching Episode 9. You know what I mean? Like that's a big thing. People forget nomenclature. I'm getting way off on a tangent here, but there's a lot.
That's what we do best. That's what we do
best, baby.
So you're telling me they do or do not go in a straight or backwards line?
Both.
There is no do or do not.
There is no do or do not.
How many movies go sideways?
Isn't that
except
a movie?
For Land of the Lost?
Isn't there a movie called Sideways?
That's true.
There's also a movie called Shaft.
There you
That's
go.
true. Well, I meant like how many times do sequels go left and right? You know what I mean? Sometimes randomly we'll get a movie that takes place during another movie. That happened. That has happened before. But like
paranormal activity.
But like, what happened to Solo and what happened to Solo and Rogue One? Those two movies that happened alongside other movies.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just they were taken as like a great example. One of my favorite book series of all time is it's only 2 books right now, but King Killer Chronicles. No, King Killer Chronicles. King Killer Chronicles has a 3rd book. It's a novella that follows another character from the movie that everyone loves, or from the book that everyone loves. No one fucking read it, and that's it, because it's like this isn't the main story we want to see. You know what I mean? So when you make a movie, not only do you have to worry about the budget, you have to worry about, are people going to watch it? Because there are movies out there that they know are going to fail. Blade Runner 2049 was destined to fail. They knew it.
I enjoyed that movie.
Well, I'm not saying it wasn't enjoyable. It's my favorite movie. It hands down 20. The reason I bring it up, it's my favorite movie of all time. I've watched it. I've rewatched it hundreds of times at this point. It's a beautiful movie. It was destined to fail.
Are you talking about the original Blade Runner? I'm sorry. I just refer to... Yeah, I always refer to just... Talking about the Ryan Gosling one?
Yeah, I'm talking...
All right, then we are on the same page.
Yeah, that's my favorite movie. And it was destined to fail. There's no way it was going to make it. It's a movie made 40 years later. And it literally was 3 hours long. It's slow. It's brooding. It's a 3 hour long neo-noir.
Brooding with all capital letters.
the big problem about Andor, that's not a problem at all. It's just a reflection of the people who actually watch Star Wars, is like, it's too slow. You're just a dumb monkey brain person who needs to see explosions all the time, and that's okay. But like, I'm just saying, things are allowed to be slow. You know what I mean? And brooding and thought-provoking and kind. And people are like, I need to see things explode. I need to see Transformers. And I'm like, it's not fucking
Michael Bay.
It's a fucking art form, dude. It's supposed to be art. Andor, and I'll tell you something. Andor did the one thing I thought would never happen. Speaking about good things about The Last Jedi, greatest visual thing that ever happened was the fucking
hyperspace, the Holdo maneuver. Yeah.
And then they fucking topped it with the fucking stars. Do you remember that shit in Andor?
Yeah, that shit was beautiful.
I was like, oh, fuck, this is better than anything they've ever done in Star Wars. It's
You're
literally
like, wow, this really is the Eye of Eldani.
I was like, and then the space whales, there's so much beautiful stuff that happens.
Good old
that topped the Holdo maneuver. And since then, I'm loving that Star Wars took cinematography seriously, because I don't know if you remember what Star Wars was like in the prequels, but it's this. Hey, and then one guy just shows up on screen like this, and it was like they just come onto screen like it's a freaking like a play, because George Lucas had no idea what cinematography was, and he still doesn't. Like, and that beautiful. Just to go back to storytelling, is soundtrack is one of the most important things, and people forget about it. Soundtrack and cinematography.
Oh yeah, the scores for movies, it's everything, bro.
I was gonna say music and sound. I know that's your wheelhouse, but we're saving that for the Dragon Call episode that you're going to be on at some point. So
what's
I'm going to ask you to refrain. It's Dragon Ball for Life. It's your interview on the other podcast.
Is that like the guy's like nickname for it?
The interview episodes. Yeah, we call it the Dragon Call.
I didn't know that. I know what you called it. Cool.
Dragon Call.
I love the Dragon Ball Z movie. We want to talk about that, but we'll just say I do love the music in Dragon Ball Z. Is some of the best music in, I think, anime in general.
The Faulkner score. Yeah, the Faulkner score. Yeah.
And dude, I think Super, the songs they I think Super, especially during the was it Goku
Tournament
Black
Power?
arc. Well, no, that's
Goku
good
Black
too.
one.
But Goku Black soundtrack is actually really, really good. That people don't realize it. That's another thing about composition is. The things you don't realize are really good because they're feeding the story so well.
If you do it right,
they'll never know you did anything at all. I'm telling you, that is if you're out there listening and you want to write a story, you just need to focus on making sure that you leave yourself out of the story as much as humanly possible. Going back to why world building is important and why fans shouldn't run Star Wars. The problem with fans in Star Wars is they put too much of themselves into it and they don't work because again, a fantasy story and a world building, that is a story in itself. It's its own creature. It's its own being. And when you force yourself on top of it, people can't see the person that the world is trying to show you.
That's also called assault.
Exactly. It's very true. You know, the world you're building did not consent to you putting your fan fiction into it, so don't do it.
There you go. Exactly.
Just saying, that's my thought process on the whole situation.
Get your Disney out of my Star Wars.
I like Disney. I like Disney.
I mean, I like Disney.
We wouldn't have any of this without them, so props to them. Me just trying to get my...
Yeah, you're facts. You're right.
Because I'm trying for them to be like, hey, Skyler, we really like the Omega Star 7 show. Why don't you come write some Skeleton Crew stuff for us? I'd love to.
I'd love to.
Manifest.
I'm going to watch that show so hard, and if there's even a single remote reference that can be drawn, a link to my show, I'll be like, I'm taking to Twitter, boys.
Cease and desist.
Like, if there's even one reference to my show and I don't get some kind of credit for it, I'm going to snap.
Gotta hit him with that cease and desist, brother. Gotta repo they shit. Taking it back.
I'll be like, listen, I'll drop the lawsuit, but I get to write on at least one episode. Come on.
There you go.
Give me that. Let me be silly.
Let me play around in here. You got a sandbox.
Let me just prove my mom wrong, okay?
I've got a pail and a shovel. You're going to let me play in the sandbox, all right?
Let me be there.
This is Sandpit Turtle. I'm in here.
I just want to be part of the boys club that is Disney. That's what it is.
Want to be in the room where
Disney
it happens.
Star Wars is just like 5 guys and Kathleen Kennedy hanging out, being like,
Do you think like Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Kevin Feige, and Kathleen Kennedy all have like this weird cigar lounge where they just like talk shit on fans?
They do.
All talk shit on fans. I know where you're going with that.
every single creator of anything, like they definitely have a room where they say, look at, like they sit there and read Reddit and say these fucking idiots have no idea what they're talking about. You know they do that.
We're definitely calling this episode the Disney Cigar Lounge.
Damn.
That's what's happening.
That kind of good. What was the guy that had the island, the super rapey island?
Oh, fucking Epstein.
That's Island,
that's what that sounds like. The Disney Cigar Lounge sounds like Epstein Island, bro.
Dude.
Oh, the executives didn't hang themselves, guys.
No. Walt Epstein Island. That's the fucking.
Hey, man, you better chill before he thaws out and comes and gets you, bro. We all know he's under Epcot. We know he's there, bro.
At some point, the golf ball is just actually a head of a giant alien, and just
Facts.
not alien, not head of a giant alien, head of a giant robot.
It's him. Yeah,
it's a Gundam. It's a Gundam.
It's 1,000.
We just see the head of it. Yeah,
1,000%. It's gonna lift up when he's ready.
Oh my gosh!
He's gonna be like, "What? Israel is in power?" Sorry.
Oh no!
I had to.
Does not compute.
Here we go.
Oh man,
hilarious.
Well, we thank you, Skyler, for joining us for this fun talk about world building. Thank you for talking about Omega Star 7 a little bit. We really appreciate you kind of hopping on and giving your insights. It's been long overdue, your venture onto And Are You Okay? So we really appreciate it.
Star Wars podcast.
Thank
Star
you,
Wars podcast.
Thank you, Skyler. Everybody gets one. Everybody gets one. So I have some fun fan questions that I need to pull up. So I'm going to have Matt ask you a question before we get there. And then after the fan questions, we'll close this thing out. So now is a good time, Matt, for you to ask Skyler any of your burning questions while I fumble around because I didn't prep for the show.
Throw me under the bus. Nah, bro, I don't have a question, but I've never got to tell you in real time. I've always told Mike, like, them theme songs that you did for DB4L, bro, I bump them shits regularly.
I gotta give you guys like an update because I've gotten so much better at mixing that I gotta give you guys an updated version. I feel like we could really
shit. I'll take it. We'll take it.
One of these days I will. I'll just be like, it's time to redo it, and then I'll redo it.
Yeah, no, my brother does music. Two of my best friends actually does music, and they're gonna put words to it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, the ending. The ending song. Yeah, they're gonna put words to it. Yeah, no. As soon as it's done, I'll definitely send it over. I told him I was like, you can't change nothing. I was like, our man's made this beat. I was like, you got to keep it as is. I was like, just figure it out. And they're like, we got you.
I can. I'll redo the Limit Break thing. I think it's such a good song.
Yeah, right. So good, man.
I have the questions. Thank you for divulging. If you don't listen to Dragon Ball for Life, go listen to at the very least the amazing theme song that Skyler wrote.
Both of them.
Both of them. There's the outro is fire as fuck, and we do love the lo-fi loop, but you can't hear it as well because you hear Matt and Trav and their beautiful voices speaking over it because they're the hosts of the show. But Skyler, while we have you away. This is our new guest game, the 4 fan questions I have for you. So, feel free to go off on your tangents here, but I have to ask, what is your favorite aspect of the universe? Is it the Jedi, Sith, scum and villainy, bounty hunters? Like to you, what is your bread and butter that you feel like those stories really resonate with you the most?
So I know Mikey knows this already, but I'm a huge fan of scum and villainy, and I love the bounty hunters. I love the smuggling. I love the underbelly. I don't know why. I just love. There's things about Indiana Jones that I'm a really big fan of, and Indiana Jones and westerns and stuff like that. And that just stuff lives and breathes. That being said, I do really like the Jedi stuff too. I mean, obviously, I like the fantasy aspects because I love fantasy stuff, but I just can never, if there's not some kind of scroungy character in the story, I just do not get down with it as much because I just love that. It's the human element of Star Wars is the scum, villainy, and underbelly stuff. It's the most human part of Star Wars because no matter if the Jedi is a human, they're still a Jedi, and that's the fantasy stuff. And I love the fantasy stuff, but I think they complement each other and they need each other because if we have fantasy only, we have Lord of the Rings. If we have scum and villainy only, we have just every noir show that was we just have Miami Vice in space. You know what I mean? So it's the combination of these two things against each other.
Miami Spice
story.
Oh my God. New episode title.
if I had to pick what I like more of, it's really the Game of Thrones type, villainy, underbelly, crime family, stuff like that, and then mixed with the political intrigue of what that entails. That's what I like the most, I would say. I still have Solo. Solo is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's super fun. I think it's my most underrated Star Wars story for sure. This one, so I love this question. I tuned my own horn here because I came up with myself. But what is your earliest Star Wars memory?
I know this one because it's a very visceral.
Who doesn't have a visceral early Star Wars memory? This is what I don't know.
It's not only one of my most early memories. It is my first. It's one of my. It's not just my earliest memory of Star Wars. It's one of my earliest memories of all time. I have when I woke up for the first time. I remember that one, and then I used to get babysat, in a house with a family, like a mother would babysit a bunch of kids in her house, that kind of situation. Grandma would drop me off, I'd be there. First Star Wars memory was me waking up in a room after a nap. I'm probably like 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6, and the first thing I see is I wake up to the Battle of Hoth. That was the very first Star Wars memory I have. I remember it very, very clearly because I'll never forget. I had seen Star Wars, because I had Star Wars stuff. The more I think back, I had Star Wars stuff, but I didn't it didn't get locked into my brain.
Right?
Yeah. It was before it clicked all in. So like my first clicked memory was me seeing the Battle of Hoth, and then the other one, which is you ever have those memories that you're not sure they're real, but they feel so real. Mm-hmm. I don't remember where it was, but I remember standing in line for a movie to see Phantom Menace with my dad. I remember that. But I don't know if it was like one of those memories. I'm like, was that real? It feels real. Because it was 1999. I was like 6 years old.
Or did you just watch so many YouTube videos of people standing out line that you're like, I was there?
I mean, it was before YouTube. So.
I was there.
But I can't remember if it was like in Colombia or if it was like in one of those the movie theater no longer exists. I know that it's been shut down.
That's awesome that you have two of those like big memories. Fun fact about The Phantom Menace: one of the only Star Wars movies I had not seen in theaters.
Damn, boy.
Until they re-released it in 3D. Shout out to Siebes. I went to go see that with the original.
Bring that shit back. I can't believe they haven't done that. They don't do that once a year. They do Ghibli movies once a year, but they can't fucking do like Star Wars in theaters once a year.
Man. I just saw Return of the Jedi for its 40th anniversary, and I now only have A New Hope left on my list of Star Wars movies I haven't seen in the theater. So another question for you here. This is a loaded question, I'm sure, but what is your favorite Star Wars character?
I said Boba Fett earlier, but oh fuck. I really, really enjoy Han Solo. I just really.
How does it feel to be so basic? No, I'm just kidding.
Listen.
What a tool.
It's a tough question because I love Han Solo. I'm not a huge fan of Lando. I think about
who's your favorite superhero? Superman.
He doesn't like Lando. Oh, so you hate black people? Is that?
That's exactly right. Don't just cut that part out, please.
You gotta cut around just that part.
You see, Riverside has an AI clip generator, so if it does it, then I might have to just do it that way.
Hold on.
You don't like black people. That's correct.
Wait, I'm gonna gasp. I gotta gasp so you can cut into it. I heard right away.
No, I don't know. Boba Fett was always my favorite as a kid. I had all the toys. I still love Boba Fett. It's a little tarnished these days. I do. Honestly, are we talking Star Wars in general forever? The old favorite, my favorite as a kid?
No. In general, who is your favorite character?
I'm gonna go out and limb and say either Revan, Darth Bane, or fucking, Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian, baby. That shit fucking is, dude. He is the best.
No, I love it.
The assignment.
Den is dope.
The fucking helmet off, dude. Pedro Pascal gets Star Wars, and Revan is just one of the best characters to ever exist inside of a Star Wars universe. He's a fucking legend. He's such a legend. Okay, pause. Tangent time. Revan and the Old Republic is so tenaciously loved that Disney had to sit down and make a statement and said, listen, we're not going to reference it, but we're not going to say it's not canon either. It's the only thing they were afraid to shut down.
Yeah, and shut down.
Yeah, they were like, we can't touch it because we know we would lose. It is still one of the most played MMOs that exists is the Old Republic. It is a well-beloved part of Star Wars, and it cannot be. It just cannot be changed. So Revan's up there too, and honestly, the characters of, you know what? I take it all back. HK-47, number one character.
Designation meatbag. I do love that character. I think I said he was in my top 3 droids, Matt. I think you
did.
Oh, dude, if we're talking droids, he's number 1, dude, for sure. Who are your top 3 droids?
My top 3 droids. I'm pretty sure I said.
I don't remember what I said.
Fuck, what was my answer? I think
I like Chopper.
I'm trying to think.
I think
Also,
Chopper was
Ezra's
my
up
number
there.
2.
I feel like BB-8 was. Oh, BB-8 was. I think was not on your list because BD-1
No.
I said was my all time. You know
Yeah.
what that was? I said BD-1, R2D2, and Chopper were mine.
Yeah, and I think I said
three.
Chopper, Hugh Yang, and
Yes.
HK-47.
Yeah,
I think
Hugh
were
Yang
mine. Hugh Yang really did a lot for
HK-47.
me in Ahsoka.
IG-88, and I still love C-3PO. I love C-3PO. I'm sorry,
That's how I feel about R2. Yeah, R2 has a soft spot in my heart.
That's fair.
my guy.
You have
got
to
more?
give the OG guys
This is fun. This is fun. Keep it coming.
of droids that we enjoy.
No.
Yeah.
Questions.
No. This is the last one, but this is also another loaded one, and feel free to reference more than one thing. But what is your favorite piece of Star Wars content? That could be movie, TV show, video game, book. Like, what is your pinnacle peak? This is Star Wars for me.
Not me saying this, but I have been voted to have had the best answer to date.
This is Matt's answer is fucking fantastic, and we'll talk about it. Actually,
I don't
while
wanna
you
hear
think
it
it over. No, while you think it
No,
over.
I don't want to be influenced.
Okay.
Because I might be like, you know what, he's right. Of all time, Knights of the Republic. It's the best.
It's phenomenal.
It literally is the best. It cannot be touched. Like, the movies couldn't do it. It just captured a part of Star Wars that it was the first time someone who had nothing to do with Star Wars said, "We get it. We wrote the assignment," and it's like showing us like what Star Wars could be. And it came out during a time when BioWare games were like they were Bethesda before Bethesda was Bethesda. Like Bethesda was around, but BioWare, they capitalized on what an RPG is and can be. So not only it showed us that it didn't just show us about what Star Wars could be, it showed us what Star Wars is missing. Freedom to be yourself. Mm-hmm. Freedom that in a video game, like I still can't believe to this day we don't have a Mandalorian video game where you don't have to even create a character. You're just in a mask and you can customize the mask. You don't have to, you know what I mean? Like that's like Star Wars RPGs have been totally tarnished and just forgotten about. And it's heartbreaking because like Fallen Order is incredible, but it's just an action adventure. The new one coming out, it's not because the protagonist is a female. I'm all about that kind of shit.
That game looks dope.
Saying, like the new game, it's an open world Star Wars, and they literally are like, yeah, we're not going to do an RPG. And we're like, what the fuck are you doing? 1313 thrown out the door. It's crazy that, like, of all media, Knights of the Republic did something that it almost felt like LucasArts was like kind of scared about it. That they were like, I don't know if we should do this, and they said we're gonna fucking do it, and then they did it, and it was just the first time Star Wars felt dangerous because they tried something that they were like 5,000 years before everything. And they're like, yeah,
and it really works though. It really fucking works.
They gave them a choice. They said you can either do something during the Clone Wars or you can do something 5,000 years before everything. And they're like, we'll take the 5,000 years thing, thank you. And they took it and they ran and they spawned an entire other universe in Star Wars. Darth Bane was spawned from it. Drew Karpyshyn, who was like I think a writer on multiple BioWare things, wrote the Darth Bane stuff. He wrote the Revan story. He wrote all this kind of crazy stuff. It was the first time in Star Wars that we saw a micro universe get created. Because it was like Star Wars, but not Star Wars. And it was just something that was like, it was like fan fiction for the first time that didn't feel like fan fiction. It's incredible. It's like really a masterclass on how to build onto a universe that's not your own. That's my thought process.
I love your answer, and I do think even for the episode itself, it's very on point. But it's not. I'm not surprised that you answered with that. I would expect other people when they get asked these questions to likely say that. But yours was based off a video game, and Matt's was also based off a video game. So
it was.
I knew it because that's my number 2.
But hold on, Skyler, because I've seen them, but I've never actually been in one. And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe yours had to do specifically with the arcade version of the pod racer.
It's the best thing ever.
Yeah, man.
Talk about it. I want to hear your
Yeah, Matt, please indulge the audience again.
Yeah, for a reminder, yes, there used to be a Star Wars Episode 1 pod racing game. It was 2 players, so the 2 things were next to each other, and like you didn't have like a wheel or a pedal they could have phoned it in. You actually had like the grip handles with the brake, and you had to like push for it to go. But like the dope shit was they had a fucking air conditioner, so like as you're going fast, it's like blowing the air in your face. And if you did like super fast, there was like more air. Man, you could like blow people up and crash into them, and it was a 2 people racer, but that fucking game was the best.
There's that one, and there's another game. That was replaced with a different arcade game similar to it, where it was like it was the whole story of Star Wars, and it was pretty much like you imagine like this huge screen, and like it was like you were flying a ship. The whole.
Were you in the yellow Naboo fighter?
You did all of it.
You were in
the
that
whole way through. Yeah, it was like I remember. It was like it does all of these famous like.
I know exactly what game you're talking about. I know exactly what game you're talking about.
But that's the thing. Like it's so much. It's like honestly like with Star. Like it's not even just down to. It's not even just what's my favorite part of Star Wars. It's the video games are the best thing. It's the one thing where you get to be like you get to be part of the universe.
Yeah.
I'm still offended that Disney didn't do more with that Oculus Rift thing they did.
Oh, I have all 3 Vader Immortal things and Tales of Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah,
and it's
like
a blast.
that, dude.
If I didn't get motion sickness so quick, I'd be in that shit all the time.
The fact that we don't just have like the ability to have like it's like EVE Online but tuned way down, and you're just in the cockpit and you're flying your ship around and you're just meeting people and doing crazy. Like I don't believe we don't have like an EVE styled Star Wars game yet, where it's like just visit places in your ship. You don't have to do anything. Like you could do like ship combat, but like it could be squadrons, but like open world or open star map. You know what I mean? Where it's just we're just going to favorite locales and that's it. You know what I mean? Also, Lego Star Wars, the new one, that shit is up there now with me too, with my favorite things.
Yeah, the Lego Star Wars games are all fire.
The new one is incredible.
It's real. The new one is very good. It's so big I
cannot believe this is so good. It's crazy how much you can do in that game.
Yeah.
And it's the Star Wars.
Is it like the whole? Is it like the whole Skywalker?
It's the whole thing.
Skywalker side.
I know exactly.
There's 5 levels per story. So there's 40 levels altogether. 40 levels for all across all 9 movies.
But you go to every single planet. And it has like an open world with quests on the planet.
It's literally like it's again.
Might have to look into that.
Well, so here's the thing: is like going back to why Knights of the Republic is so important. Is they channel it in they channel it very well in Fallen Order. I haven't played Survivor yet, but Fallen Order.
Yo,
what a game!
Survivor's story, easily in the Disney era, it's in my top 10.
I gotta play it. I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a moment. There's a moment in that game that I definitely cracked my top 10 Star Wars moments of all time, and I think from like a storytelling standpoint, there's enough. I think like narrative points that I just Matt subverting expectations, right?
Yeah.
Just around every corner, you're like, I think this is where it's going. I think this is where it's going. Nope.
Somewhere else. Yeah. Hey, facts.
And in such a good way, did it like, it really feels like you're playing a movie and then some.
Well, it
definitely
captured
an incredible experience.
It captured a very important thing about BioWare that they've lost as of lately, but the idea of micro worlds, like Lego Star Wars has it, and so does Old Republic, and the original Witcher game have it, where you have locales. So it makes the universe feel more realistic. So in Knights of the Republic, you're flying around the Ebon Hawk, and you land in specific places on planets. You don't get the whole planet to explore. You get Dantooine and the major city on Dantooine, and that's it. And they do that in Fallen Order. You're on a ship base, you're hanging out in your ship, you're doing little fucking fuck you things on your ship, and then you land, and then you have a specific area, and it makes the world feel more realistic. It's the problem I have with a lot of RPGs, because no RPG can capture it. Starfield got kind of close, but when you're playing Skyrim is a great example. It's an entire country, and there's 1,000 people in it. That's a crazy number for a video game. 1,000 different NPCs, but still, it feels small. But you can get around that by saying, well, you can only go to this part of the world. That's why it feels so big, because you can fit 1,000 NPCs into a video game, and if you go to a big village, it would make sense. There's 1,000 people in this big village. You know what I mean?
That's like Ghost of Tsushima did that. Kind of what you're saying, like locales, there's like different parts of the same peninsula you could go to.
Star Wars is so I know right at the 2-hour mark, I can see it. Star Wars in all of its mediums is a masterclass in world building. It's literally no one's ever done it even close. It's always Game of Thrones tried. I'm not saying George R.R. Martin's not an incredible author, and the people who made the movie or TV series aren't good, but Game of Thrones, it's just too much exposition. It's too much. You get way too into it, and it draws you in a different way. Star Wars, you feel like you're blessed to be there. It feels like when you're there, you're family.
Where everybody knows your name.
But Harry Potter couldn't do it. Harry Potter's too much of that isekai kind of, I'm a normal person, but I'm also a wizard. Lord of the Rings, close, too much exposition. It is a master class in how little you can put into something and still make a world that is, to this day, still relevant 50 years later. It's crazy. We're coming up on 50 years of Star Wars. That is insane. That it's as relevant as it was 50 years ago. Maybe even more so. I made this point. I kind of wanted to while I'm on this, if I ever come back, but I want to do it now. There's this big argument I had with a friend over if Star Wars can be considered mythology. Now, exactly. He was like, mythology. I'm like, listen, there's a Church of Jedi now. Back then, mythology was just stories that people told around a circle. Like, you know what I mean? This is a movie. Imagine something being so relevant that it'll never not be relevant. Like, 100 years from now, Star Wars will name one other thing that stayed this relevant. Let me give you a hypothetical just scenario. Yeah,
nuclear holocaust, right? And people forget all these things, and there aren't a lot of books left, but books still exist. People can still read. There are probably more Star Wars books out there in print than the Bible at this point. So you tell me. You tell me. I'm telling you. Right, like what has more of a chance to potentially, if people get so detached from society as we know it right now, and what exists is the books that are left over, then I think that Star Wars definitely could be considered a modern mythology. Honestly, I look at people who have stayed relevant, like Shakespeare and stuff, and Edgar Allan Poe. Those are things that permeate society, and I think Lord of the Rings, I'm telling you right now, Lord of the Rings has fallen out of being relevant. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. It's definitely... I still watch Lord of the Rings. I was going to say, Matt and I have a very special place in our heart for Rings of Power, being apparently the only two people who enjoyed that show. But I love Lord of the Rings. None of the stuff I say comes from a subjective, I hate this. It's more of what I've noticed. I've noticed that they made Rings of Power, it flopped like crazy. Star Wars, because people are impatient. I know, but probably Star
one of the
Wars,
greatest shows I've ever seen.
It's incredible, but Star Wars, they can drop a steaming pile of actual dog shit, and it will change the world. People didn't love The Last Jedi, they still talk about it. It's been out for over 10. It's been out for 8 years. I don't know. It's still a hot topic thing. It's a hot topic thing. People still talk about the first one. Lord of the Rings was up there, after those big movies came out, and The Hobbit, The Hobbit was what killed Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm saying it's what just don't take one movie and turn it into movies. Yeah.
I would have been fine with two, them doing it in two, but that third movie was so fucking unnecessary. Dog.
I truly believe that Star Wars created something that no one. They did the trilogy. It was the first movie trilogy. I was like, The Godfather? They started it. It was kind of but I don't know. I forgot when the third Godfather came out, but it was the first cinematic universe trilogy, where when it was over, it didn't feel wrapped up. it
When
felt
did
like
Planet
that's
of the
just-
Apes come out? Was that before or after Star Wars?
but that's like 7 movies. You know what I mean? So I guess that's technically the first cinematic univerce was Planet of the Apes.
Oh, you just mean like specifically just a trilogy versus like
Like
Star Wars? I feel
something
sequels
about a
are
full
thing.
story because we tell stories in 3 acts. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and 4 acts is usually a TV show where there's a 4th mysterious act that bridges to the next 3 acts.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I guess the Planet of the Apes movies weren't all interconnected. Like at a certain point, they kind of were just their
yeah,
own
like
movies.
that's actually I didn't even think about Planet of the Apes, but that would be like I guess the first because it was like the 60s and 70s that came out.
Yeah.
But like I do think but here's the thing, it was huge at the time, but Star Wars definitely capitalized on what is like a blockbuster. It was the first blockbuster that changed everything. Jaws came out, Terminator, Alien. It changed everything because they were like, oh, it's not film. People want to see movies.
Mm.
And there were movies back then. But like before, it was all this cerebral stuff like Logan's Run. All science fiction was like
Dante's Peak.
there's these weird movies about like
That's where my
weird
fear of
movies-
volcanoes comes from.
but
It's a rational fear.
no, I think that people got into their heads that if they're gonna make a serious movie, or a serious story, it's gotta be 3 movies. They did like Iron Man, Thor up until Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
You know, Captain America.
Yeah, and the only
That is
person who
kinda-
seems
that
to
is
get
kinda
that
the
it can be
benchmark.
done in one or one and done, I guess, is the actual phrase, is Christopher Nolan.
And if yeah, well, that and like get back to Blade Runner. Blade Runner is told in a full story. The first one, 82, totally done. It's done. They came back when they had an idea to continue the story. That was it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's so I don't know. I find that Star Wars has permeated the zeitgeist to the point where I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Oh yeah, no, it's a forever thing, for sure.
I was gonna say, for my sake, hopefully not.
Then I'm out of a job.
Selfishly, I will hang on to that. Well, Skyler, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Matt, for hopping along on the ride as always. The Animaniacs, as we so cleverly deemed you last time. Thank you for
Yeah,
tuning in. We're so happy to finally have a name for our fan base here. Before we get on out of here, and Matt gives us his outro that I love so much. Skyler, tell people where they can find you, how they can listen to Omega Star 7, and then we'll give our socials and such, and we'll ride this thing out.
So you can find Omega Star 7 on any streaming platform. I think it might, if we have problems with Amazon from time to time, but who listens to podcasts on Amazon? So you listen to anywhere normal people listen to podcasts, and you can find us if you just type in Omega Star 7 and hope you don't get articles about Omega from Bad Batch, another great Star Wars show, because I'll ever show it if I type it in. Omega Star 7 _ pod or Team Omega Star 7, or Team Omega Star, you'll find us one way or the other. You can hear a lot of my bands and music. I'm in a bunch of bands too. I'm not going to plug every single one as we talked about at the beginning, but you'll find me. I'll be around.
Matt, all the people can find us at Amy Are You Okay Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Star Wars
and
podcast.
And DB4L _ pod for Dragon Ball for Life, our sister podcast. We're going to hear Matt and our good friend Travis talk about all things
Our
anime,
boy.
Dragon Ball related, including our Dragon Call segment where we interview tons of different content creators, voice actors, people like Skyler who, are doing creative endeavors. So, at some point we'll set that up. And Matt, why don't you give us the good old outro that you came up with last week?
I got you, good brother. I added a little bit to it.
Let's go. I'm ready.
All right, Animaniacs. Never forget. It could be the prequels. It could be the sequels. Luke, Obi-Wan, Finn, Rey. Life can be a beach, but as long as there's no sand, Annie's gonna be okay.
I just want to reiterate that I do in fact like black people, and that was a joke. It's been
What
on my
a
mind this whole
perfect Greatest podcast ending of all time. Nothing else needs to be said.
I'm not even going to hit him with the "May the Force be with you." We're good.
And with you. Later, nerds.